Okay, hello, my name is Katrina, and today I want to give you a brief overview on our NURBS paper on using the magnitude of a metric space for evaluating the diversity of latent representations. First, let's have a look at why we want to evaluate diversity. And it turns out that studying diversity is a key question in evaluating generative models, but also for understanding latent representations in general. And diversity here refers to the richness and relative abundance in model outputs. So in this setting, we are evaluating the diversity of our input data, which could be sets of generated images, graphs, or text. And we choose to represent these data via embedding models because this allows us to actually understand the similarities between observations in an automated manner and evaluate the diversity without any human input. And the questions we want to answer then either have to do with evaluating the intrinsic diversity of latent spaces or to answer how well model outputs capture the diversity of a known grant of reference distribution. So we could either evaluate diversity intrinsically or do a reference-based comparison. And it turns out that from a theoretical perspective, there are certain requirements on how diversity should be measured and what diversity actually means and how it's defined in practice. So one requirement that I want to highlight here is that diversity should measure the effective size, the clustering behavior, or the entropy of a space, which is one of the fundamental properties of diversity. And here we also can see a motivating example why it's important. So we have a uniform distribution on the left that's more diverse than the more clustered point pattern on the right. And we find that diversity measures should actually be able to tell the difference between these two spaces because there's clearly nuanced differences in diversity between them. But actually, a lot of commonly used diversity measures in machine learning currently cannot distinguish between those two examples. And they do not actually measure a notion of effective size as would be required from a more theoretical discussion. So we find that there's a need for a more fundamental and mathematically well-founded approach to diversity and evaluating generative models, but also machine learning in general. And the way we want to go about defining well-principled measures of diversity are actually using the magnitude of a metric space. Magnitude is a geometric invariant of a space that, in a sense, magnifies trends in diversity across multiple scales. And what this means is that magnitude functions measure the effective number of distinct points or the effective number of distinct clusters at a scale of distance t. For example, here we can clearly see how magnitude captures trends in diversity across multiple resolutions. And we have examples of 4 different latent spaces that vary in diversity. So the first one shows a uniform pattern that's clearly more diverse than the more clustered pattern in the second space. And these spaces are yet again more diverse than the 2 Gaussian blobs, which is more diverse than the 1 Gaussian blob. And the magnitude functions nicely show this trend in diversity across multiple scales of distance, which this scaling factor can be seen as zooming into a space in a sense. So the higher the resolution, the higher the diversity, but also the higher the value of magnitude, the more diverse the space. And we want to leverage this multi-scale behavior of magnitude to define diversity measures that can actually pick up on these nuanced differences in diversity between different latent spaces. First, we use the area under magnitude function to measure the intrinsic diversity of a space. And next, we use the area between 2 magnitude functions to measure the difference in diversity between 2 latent representations. In the paper, we then automate the calculation and the scale selection for computing these diversity measures. And let's now look at some actual results in terms of the experiments we've implemented. So to give you a brief overview, we evaluate our diversity measures for text, image, and graph embeddings, and we find that magnitude detects mode collapse and mode dropping for graph and image generative models, and it does so better than existing baseline diversity measures for these tasks. Further, we find that magnitude distinguishes text embedding models and it characterizes the intrinsic diversity of generated text, yet again better than alternative baseline measures. And overall, we find that magnitude gives an expressive summary of the diversity that can be used to evaluate both the intrinsic diversity and to conduct reference-based diversity evaluation of latent representations. To sum this all up, we use magnitude to define theoretically justified and automated measures of the diversity of latent spaces. We find that our measures are probabilistically stable, that they allow for a flexible choice of the similarity, and that they give expressive summaries of both the diversity and the geometry of latent spaces. Finally, we show further results in the paper, and we've published a code for computing these diversity measures. So in case you're interested in more details, please check them out.